Excellent. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Systems of Wealth podcast. I am your host, Noah Kronfly. Today, I'm joined by another very special guest, someone who I've had the opportunity to work with and collaborate with through our respective agencies. Someone that I just am very happy to have connected with. And you're actually not too far away with me. You're up in Long Beach. We're both in Southern California, so not too far away. It is the great Sunni Sukumar. Sunni, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Noah. I appreciate you having me. And we've been having some great conversations and supporting each other with some cool things we've been working on together, and also just sharing our hearts. Really, we've both had some losses in our life recently, so it's beautiful to connect in that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think this will be a fun conversation because, we've only had one sort of longer conversation up until this point. And so I think, I've been super jazzed just to ask you like a ton of questions, learn more about your background, your journey. And so, first off, I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to be honest with me. Thank you for being a very compassionate human being. It's just awesome to connect and feel the energy that I get from people like this. So, yeah, man, I've been super, super stoked to have this conversation with you.
I'm honored to hear that, man. Thank you so much. And if there's anything I can do to serve you or anyone listening to this, let's do it.
It's fantastic, dude. I appreciate it. So, I definitely want to dive into sort of your background and journey because it was interesting. The first time we had our conversation, you were saying that your background was as or in sort of the software space, and then you pivoted to being in sort of the marketing world just because of your love for it. And I want to talk about that because I think there's a lot of value in people sort of either feeling like they're on one path and maybe they're being called to do something else. And it takes a lot of courage to make a decision like that. But I always start these podcasts and then we'll go into the background, but I always start these with like, when people ask you what you do, like what your profession is, how do you answer that? What do you say when people ask you what you do?
Depends who I'm talking to. You know how
That's my answer to it too, is absolutely.
in marketing, like the message depends very much on the audience.
Well said. Yep.
So it totally depends. Like if
What's
I'm
your
talking,
like crisp and clean way that you would just, because mine's like I say I'm a marketing and operations consultant. It's very just kind of generic depending on who I'm talking to. But if someone has some chops of what we're talking about, then I'll get a little bit deeper into it. But that's kind of my crisp and clean way that I always describe it.
yeah. Um, Part of it for me goes back to what marketing even is. And
Yep.
I think the last time we were talking,
Mm-hmm.
I was just encouraging you, and I encourage every marketer to come across to have their own definition of marketing, like what it means personally to you.
Yep. I have that on my list to ask you because I don't think we got to talk about what your definition is, and I'm super curious. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll just give it to you now because it goes to the heart of your question, I think.
Sweet.
So for me, marketing is the science of helping people embrace change.
All right.
Because
Wow. I love that.
in marketing, first of all, marketing and sales, these are all just different terms. Some people call it marketing, some people call it sales, some people call it persuasion, and some people call it all kinds of derogatory things or other really glossy labels. There's all kinds of emotions and all kinds of labels for what it is that we do to enable someone else to buy something, right?
Yep.
And so part of it's just funny to me that marketers talk about a funnel and then salespeople talk about a pipeline.
Yeah.
There's only one thing. There's only one pipeline. There's only one funnel. There's only one whatever you want to call it. And no matter what we're doing, we're trying to get someone to take an action. And so when I zoom out from that, I actually see this process as a healing process if done well, if it's orchestrated well by us, us as people who care about this craft.
Right.
If we do it well, it actually is healing for the person who's going through that process, coming into our funnel, etc., because they're coming into us in pain, and what they're coming to us for is a transformation to a better feeling state. Everyone has a vision for their life, right?
Right.
And they want to help, they want to step into that vision in whatever way they can. And yet almost everything they've tried, really everything they've tried so far, somehow hasn't worked for them, or it doesn't work for them, not because it doesn't work, but because they're not able to embrace it. They're not able to say, yeah, I'll spend the money, or yeah, I'll put in the work. They're not going to do the P90X program. They're not going to do whatever it is. They're just not able to embrace that and be like, yeah, that's my path to change. That's my path to that vision. And so if we can help if we can put something in their path, can we show them a new path that
Mhm.
they actually embrace? They're like, oh my God, that's it. Like that's the thing that I can do to actually finally get there. That's why I define it that way. So sometimes I give people that definition and then just get some curious about like what how do you help them embrace change and like
Yeah.
have this new life? Are you some kind of life coach and kind of like you're some kind of like naturopathic doctor? Like what do you do? And like it gets them really interested and curious. And then I'm curious to have those conversations because
Of course.
start to see what their perception is
Right.
of what it was required for someone to have healing or for someone to feel better about their lives. Some people would have a cynical view of like me calling it healing because like if you're just trying to sell someone a Ferrari or something, it's like, is it really healing?
Right.
So it depends. Everything depends on your intention. Like
Yes.
if we come to it with the intention of serving that person,
Yes.
then even a Ferrari could be something that is healing for them because, for example, that could have been the same type of car that their grandfather drove, and it
Yep.
means something very deeply to them.
Right.
Whereas someone else wants that car because they want to pick up girls, and it's like a very,
Status. Right.
very it's status, and it's a very surface level thing. So the same car can mean something so different to that person.
Wow.
So sometimes I'll just be really to the point and say I'm a marketer, and then because I'm curious to see what their reaction is to that
Hmm.
word.
Yeah.
And other
Marketers get
times
a bad rap. Marketers
then
ruin
other times I
everything.
give them that deeper definition of like, hey, I help people embrace change, and then I want to have a conversation.
Aha.
Or sometimes because I really love education, I love seeing the transformation people have through
Yeah.
learning.
Right.
So I say I help people sell courses and coaching and things that can help
Mm.
transform people's lives. And because I've done a lot of that in the last 15 years, that's really where my specialty has been. But it totally depends on the situation, the person, and the kind of reaction I'm looking to get to.
That's great, dude. I really like that definition. Yeah, we didn't get to talk about that the last time we talked. And I mean, you had posed that question to me, and I had rattled it around in my brain a lot. And I actually, one of the most recent podcasts I did too, somebody asked me like and I think you asked me this too on our first conversation, like what was my earliest memory of money? Because we were talking about money and systems of wealth and sort of that sense. And so I've started to define those different areas of what money means to me or is to me, what marketing is. And I think as I was going through it, and I even made some notes because I didn't want to forget as I was talking about it. But so to me, there's like four main areas of business, and at least the four areas that matter the most to me. That's marketing, sales, operations, and finance. Those are my big four areas, right? So marketing to me was like the sort of opportunity to amplify sort of the brand message and sort of, the opportunity in generating some interest. And sales was sort of stewarding and facilitating the relationship with that person and matching them up with the right opportunity. Operations being obviously, systems and team and fulfilling on a client results. And then finance is sort of like the health of a business, managing investments, decision making, stuff like that.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the way that I was looking at it.
Yeah, that's a great way to break it up. A lot of times, and I make jokes about marketing versus sales and that stuff, but a lot of times sales is that more dialed in process
Right.
down the track where you're talking to people and you're helping them steer towards a particular decision that makes sense for them,
Yes.
an option to buy from you or not to buy from you.
Yeah.
But you're helping them on a very personal level doing that.
Yeah.
So those are common ways the words are used. So I think it's a good way to break it down.
And I'd say salesmen get a bad rap too, right? I mean, marketers
Oh,
get a bad rap,
huge.
but sales do too. So that's so interesting. But yeah, let's go. So let's peel these layers back a bit and talk about, because I know marketing wasn't your first sort of stab at a professional life, and it wasn't, the path that you were on. So what was like, take me back to sort of like what was going on before you made that transition, and sort of what your professional life looked like, and even like personally kind of what was going on, and what, pushed you to then embracing sort of the, becoming a marketer.
Embracing change myself, right?
Embrace and change yourself. Got to start
It
within.
was, yeah. I was a software engineer, and in high school, I discovered computer programming. I took this class, and it was back then it was Turbo Pascal, just like on Microsoft DOS, and
Yeah.
we had these green screen Tandy computers, like super old school, right?
Yeah.
Command line everything is, and like drawing on the screen was like putting a bunch of characters in a certain shape and position, like making a pumpkin out of a bunch of X characters. It was like so freaking primitive. But like even that to me was exciting. Like I just knew, like you just know, like you discovered baseball, and it's kind of like that where you just know that
Hmm.
this is something I want to do.
Hmm.
I might suck at it right now, but I just want to do it.
Yeah, for whatever
And
reason.
doesn't matter how, it doesn't matter if I can get to the highest level at it, but I want to do it and I just love what it is. So
Yes.
I discovered it. And I had a couple of nerdy friends in high school that were also in that class. Um,
Did you go to high school? Were you here in Southern California? Did you go to high school around here?
yeah, I went to Long Beach Poly.
No way. All right.
So
Fantastic.
I had Cameron Diaz, geometry teacher, who also happened to be a computer programming teacher.
Okay.
And so that's where I learned. And then I just started doing the projects on the side because I'm just like, when I get obsessed with something, I'm just
Hmm.
really into it. And I'm
Yep. All
spending
in.
as much time as I can outside of school with my own projects. And I ended up writing test prep software for the
Really?
for the
Okay.
SAT.
Dude.
And I created this whole database of a couple thousand vocab words, and it was for the verbal part of the SAT back then.
Wow.
And my program would generate
Crazy.
random multiple choice questions, and all the answers were random, and it had like a ticker tape of vocabulary, and it had all these different features,
Man.
and it had reporting, and all I just went all out. And I was working on it like
Wow.
all summer. Not that many people ended up using it, which was a bummer, but I discovered my passion for really helping people
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
learn and helping people, achieve a vision that they had for themselves. Because
Right.
when you're in high school, like these tests are like everything. You got to get a
Hmm.
good
Of
score, and then you get into college and all this stuff, right?
course.
So that was the first thing. And then in my senior year, I wrote some technical analysis software for financial markets, and that was another nerdy thing I was into. I wanted to help people learn,
Crazy.
and and then I went to college, and I at first didn't declare my major, but worked really hard and got into a couple of years later and got into the computer science and electrical engineering major
Okay. Where were you going to college?
at UCLA.
UCLA. Okay. Sweet.
So, and then I had amazing timing, right, Noah, because I graduated right into the .com crash. So people were making all this
Perfect.
money. Like my whole time, I'm working super hard
Yeah,
in
you're
college.
like,
I'm like, people are
can't
like, oh,
wait.
they're making all this money and
Gold
they're getting these
rush.
offers.
Yeah.
And then I happen to graduate like right at a time where
Oh
nobody's making any
man,
money anymore.
dude.
Or it felt like that. It's not technically true, but there was, it felt like walking into a desert when people were, before they were walking into like a lush garden. And
Wow.
like, it was just kind of like a desert. So I worked on startups, my own startups. Yeah, and I failed at two different startups and learned a lot in the process. And it's like late '04, coming into '05, it's like, man, I need to get a job somehow.
What were those startups?
One was it was a massive vision, so it was likely we were going to fail anyways. It was going to be like the decentralized marketplace
Wow, really?
of
Early
well,
2000s talking about decentralized marketplace. Wild.
it was going to be a marketplace for really fragmented industries like jewelry and like toy
Okay.
making and other industries that had suppliers in Asia. A lot of it was going to be in Asia. My partner was Asian himself,
Okay.
so people like that to have an integrated supply chain, because it was really hard for them to efficiently source materials and
Hmm.
to have representation for themselves when it came to negotiating price and legal and all that stuff. So we wanted
Right.
to really bring it all together, like all these different services under one umbrella, and then
Jeez.
offer it to them.
Love that.
And we had, like, I wrote some of the initial code and for them to be onboarded. And there was like a vision of how to bootstrap it. But honestly, I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. I mean, he knew a lot more than I did, but still, like, it was a big vision. And Alibaba was one of our biggest competitors, and they,
Right, of
at the
course.
time, they got $50 million, and we didn't. And then there's another competitor that got $50 million, and guess what? We didn't. So, and now Alibaba is a multi-billion dollar company,
Billions. Yeah.
and everyone knows
Madness.
it, and nobody knows what the heck we were up to.
Gosh, crazy,
But
dude.
it was an amazing learning journey.
Of
And
course.
then we zoomed in on the jewelry business because his family was in the jewelry business,
Okay.
which was one of the really fragmented industries.
Yep.
And we attempted to go like retail with that and build a whole site and everything. And that just somehow never took off the way we thought. So put in a lot of time, just tons of effort and time and strategy and all the stuff. And then
Hmm.
didn't like nothing came out of
Okay.
nothing
Yeah.
tangible came out of that
Right.
except for experience. We're going, oh wow, I'm
Of
so thankful
course.
for the experience. And
Absolutely.
now I got to go get a job
Go
and
get a job.
make some progress in life. So I ended up working at what was then the world's #2 travel community, which people haven't heard of now, but back then it was a big site, and I got I got to the job. I was really thankful for it. And they said, actually, Sunny, you're not going to be working on the site. You're going to be building us a custom tracking analytics platform.
Oh.
And I was like, a what?
That's not the job I signed up for.
Because I wanted to be able to tell my mom, hey, when you click that button, I wrote the code that does the
That's
thing,
me.
and then
Yeah.
it returns the page which shows you the other thing, and then it's
Right.
really cool because then you can plan your trip or whatever, right? Whatever would be, right? And they're like, yeah, you're not going to be doing any of that. You're going to be doing something more important or
Hmm.
equally important
Yeah,
because we
right.
need to make sure all of this works and we can understand the numbers. And at the time, Google Analytics was actually a new product
Okay.
because Google had bought a company called Urchin the year before that
Okay.
and then renamed it as Google Analytics, and it didn't do everything that they wanted.
Mm.
So they're like, you got to parse through these multiple servers that we have line by line, like about
Ay, ay, ay.
100 million rows of data per month, something like that, and extract the data into tables and a database, et cetera, and then query all of that to get us exactly the insights we're looking for, and then automate that process, right?
Goodness.
And it was tough, and I'm pretty sure I almost got fired a couple of times because it was really hard, and I there was just times that I sucked and I was burning out, and it was just not a good combination. So part of it was like not feeling totally on purpose, like in what I was
Hmm.
doing. But although I did end up using that like analytics so much when I got into marketing later,
Of
but
course.
at the time, what was going on in my personal life is I had all these health issues. I had really intense cystic acne, like all over my face and my neck and
Oh,
my arms and my chest and my back, and I had just intense chronic fatigue, and I had severe social anxiety. Where even in meetings, like any given business meeting, we all sat around the table. It's not like I even had to stand up and make a presentation or anything. I just had
yeah.
to talk about a handful of things that I was, give a handful of bullet updates stuff I was working on, right?
Right.
In a weekly meeting. And even that, like I had this terror that
Wow.
would come up in me almost every week. And so I didn't know that much about how to deal with that outside, especially outside of work, because I had to go to work.
Of
But
course.
outside of that, one thing I had to also do was go to the grocery store. And so I'll go to the grocery store, and getting the food wasn't the hardest part. And I did make some friends in the grocery store because I would go there a lot, and a couple different stores, but there was one in particular I used to go to. And so I'll get the food, and that went reasonably okay every time. It's because I was like systems thinker and I know where everything is. I'm like, okay, I have my list. I actually had like spreadsheets on my computer, and I printed it
Yeah.
out and I checked them off. I'm like a nerd, right? Big time nerd. And I walk in there with my list and everything, and I get the food. And then that would be the hard part because then I had to go, pay for the food, right?
Right.
And it turns out like there was no automation back then, no, like self checkout or
Of
AI or anything
course.
like that.
Right.
So I had to talk to these cashiers, and it turns out like they were the hardest kinds of human beings for me to talk to because they were they,
Hmm.
they were these kind of human beings called girls,
Mm-hmm.
and they were the hardest kind of girls, but they were young and attractive girls. So
Yep.
so I would this is how dumb it was. I would rehearse what I was going to say
Man.
when I was coming down the aisle and be like, okay, today I'm just going to say hello, or today I'm just going to hey, or say it in a different way, or like, hey, I like
Right.
that shirt, which that turns out to be a pretty dumb thing to say when they're
Yeah.
wearing a uniform. Like, well, yeah, I was
Oh
wearing that
my
shirt
God.
last time you came in here, and the time before that too. Um, so there'd be things where I'd be like, yeah, yeah, don't ever say that again. Try something else. And over time, I just learned how to have more natural conversations, and that was a big pushing myself through that was huge. And
Yeah.
I discovered my favorite book at the time was, and it really still is my favorite book of all time, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Of course. I got it up
Because
there
there's
somewhere.
so much, yeah, there's just so much wisdom about how to connect with people and how to
Absolutely.
genuinely come to appreciate who that person is and get to
Yep.
know that person. So
Hmm.
as I went through that, I reflected on myself and my journey, and I started to see that I wasn't the only one who was struggling. I was struggling more than a lot of people, but
Yeah.
there were other people struggling to communicate in a way that resonated for others. And then I saw that in business, that was true also. Like when I went to work,
Ah,
I would see that like the company had a hard time in certain ways, and then other companies had a hard time communicating in ways that resonated for people. So
yeah.
I thought, wow, this is really a huge problem in the world, and it's such a tragedy on a personal level because any of us who have something in our heart we want to share with
Hmm.
the world is if we want to do it for a living and make a living out of it, if we don't know how to share it, it's such a tragedy. And that's what happens every day. So many small companies, solopreneurs, freelancers, whatever you want to call them, they go out of business
Yeah.
and they can't do what they wanted to do, and they have to go do a job that they hate, and it's just such a tragedy. So that was my calling into marketing.
Wow.
I started to realize that because I really love to write. I like the techie nerdy stuff, like tracking and the analytics. I came to like it, and when I got a chance to go work at a personal growth training company, and they put me in charge of like running the affiliate commissions and
Okay.
sending out emails to the list and other things. So I started to
All right.
see, and I didn't even know there was a thing called copywriting at the time,
Mm-hmm.
where someone would write in someone else's voice and
Mm-hmm.
send that email to the list. I was like learning all these things. I was like, wow, I love this. This is really cool. And I'm able to combine the psychology and the writing and the tech and all these different skills in a way that serves people. Like this is
Yeah.
great. So that's
Wow.
how it evolved over time. But it was definitely an evolution into marketing.
Dude, that's awesome. I love that. Like, and I think I see a similarity between so many entrepreneurs or just business people is like they started with a personal problem and that was sort of what prompted them to like, I have this problem, I need to solve it. And then having the awareness of like, man, there's so many other people that are experiencing the same sort of thing that I went through. And I want to be, that's what I can then sink my teeth into. Like that's what gives me like I want to drive that forward. Going back, so the going from like the job that you had at the travel agency to then being, part of that other agency now to like kind of being them, like, was there a transition period? Did you have to like, all right, I'm quitting and I'm leaving and I'm pursuing this marketing career? Like, did your parents like, were they happy with that? Like, what was that experience like?
Parents definitely were not happy.
Yeah, right.
Parents in general are not happy about these things, and then you like zoom in on Asian parents are especially unhappy, and then out of Asian parents like Indian parents like it's,
Oh my gosh.
and then out of Indian parent, Indian mom, like no, you're like no, you're not doing that.
No, you're not doing that. That's right. Right. Yeah.
Because I mean, and to her credit, she had put me through the college and she
Of
had paid
course.
for that, and just
Right.
she's fantastic. At the same
Yeah.
time, just really scared of like, what does this mean that you're going to try to go do something else?
Right. Of course.
And that job at the personal growth training company wasn't a marketing job. It was actually me being the head of their IT.
Okay.
It was a
All
small
right.
company. They said we need someone to run our IT, and then
Ah,
and to manage the IT at all our events because they have these big seminars and weekend workshops and that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
that was all part of the job. But as part of that, I got to see and manage some of the like the techie stuff and the running the marketing side.
Yeah, of course.
So it all started to come together when I saw those things. And then over time, then I went to go work in another company where the owner let me do some of those things where I started to show him that I could write. And I started to write in his voice and I started to write emails. And it was like, it was this evolution over a period of years. And I saw that I got to experience the education and how much it was helping people and how it
Yep.
was helping me because
Mm-hmm.
I needed, I wanted to go and work there at these companies too because I wanted to experience more of the training. And I was already going to the workshop. I was using all my vacation time when I was a software engineer to go to the workshops at these companies,
Dude,
and so they got
yeah.
to know me.
That's awesome.
And then eventually I
So
found a
cool.
job, and it turns out that the guy who hired me to the first personal growth training company, just by coincidence, was another guy who went to the same high school I did, but like
Oh, wow.
20 years before that or something like that.
Crazy.
Um, not quite 20 years, but it was, he had gone there a number of years before me.
Right.
And in our conversation or interview, we because he was in the same academy, the whole system of academies like within the school.
Mm-hmm.
and we were in the same one, and so we talked about the same AP chemistry teacher that we both had, and it was weird. It was kind of one of those
So
synchronicities where
funny.
I just knew that that was lining up for me,
Yes.
and
There's
so
those little
that's
breadcrumbs, right? Like you like
right.
make a decision, you're like, huh, this is connected in a weird way that like I could have never
I could have never
yeah, I can't
imagined that
plot
that
this
would have
out.
happened,
Right. Ah, it's so cool. I love
and
that. I
so
love those stories.
that's why I was able to leave the pure software engineer job to go run
Okay.
IT in that company, and then that
Okay.
evolved into marketing. And then
Got it.
I have not taken an efficient path with marketing because I just struggled for lots of years doing all kinds of different projects and all kinds of exploring all kinds of different ways. And
Right.
again, with startups and projects and like
Yep. Of
and trying to find my own like niche within it to be a
course.
freelancer, and just
Yes.
it's not been like one thing, but I'm the type who likes to know a lot about various things and then to connect the
Hmm.
dots
Absolutely.
on any given project. So it has served me, but it's been a hard
Absolutely. I think
path.
that's really important for people to hear though, because I think so much of like that first step into like either a new profession or getting started with something or even starting a new business. Like I will say, from I know I'm a young budding entrepreneur still, but I would say like the first business that you try is not going to work. Like it's not going to like it's just not going to work. It's going to fail. Like I think if you have that expectation just going into it, then that's fine because I mean like the first idea that you have like and from what you think success is going to look like, man, there's going to be so much evolution and change and people that come into your life and ideas and opportunities that like you could have never even like imagined from just step one. But when you get into step two and three and four, things just start to kind of, I wouldn't even say like come together or open up, but like there's just some opportunity there of like, all right, I'm gonna pull that thread. I'm gonna see where this goes. And inevitably, I don't know if you're ever really like land and you're like, I made it, but like it's a fun process. You learn. I got a question for you though. So
No, to answer your question, it doesn't feel like that. It just feels like this moment is a blessing. Every breath is a blessing, and
yes, well said.
everything I've gone through has been just an amazing ride. It's been just so much intense experience
I love your
in
perspective on
so
it.
many different ways.
Yeah. How did you, so, I mean, so much of your like the skills that you had built, were so much in sort of the, technology software kind of space and then pivoting into marketing. Like, were there books or courses or workshops or some of the stuff that you remember, like, even like some of the, I wouldn't even say like marketing gurus, but like some of the people that like you sort of latched onto of like, all right, this is helping me build my way towards finding sort of my niche and my own skill of like learning copywriting and stuff like that. Like, do you remember what that process was like for building up your, your marketing skill set? Of
Yeah, there's so many people along the way.
course.
Some of them, some of them are people that I didn't have directly relationships with, but like for
Mm-hmm.
example, Gary Bencivenga is a famous copywriter, and I
Yes.
came across his stuff many years ago,
Right.
and I really just genuinely appreciated that he took a very honest approach,
Mm-hmm.
very proof driven approach, very conversational approach, not hypey,
Right.
and he would put in all the hours required to produce
Mm.
any kind of advertising he did or a sales letter he wrote, anything he worked on. He wanted to feel like a friend talking to a friend,
Yeah.
genuinely informing that friend of what might be something that they would want to consider.
Nice.
And one of his core principles was that the advertisement itself, again, whatever you're working on, whatever form it takes, that it should be something that is so valuable to the person in itself that they want to save it, that they want to cut it out, they want to keep it and save it because they find it so
Wow.
valuable on its own.
Yeah.
And that's a very high
Jeez.
standard. And I was talking to someone, one of my coworkers just yesterday about that same thing because he shares that too. And that's something that many marketers along the way have forgotten. And at times it's hard to always come up with something where it feels like that. But if you do have that standard in mind, then you can reflect on it and find better and better ways to add value to people. And I mean, there's just been so many people. Like Terry Dean has been a mentor of mine, for example, for 10 years, and um, he just recently closed his monthly. He called his monthly mentor club, but that's something that I had access to him in a forum, and You gave me a lot of pointers along the way. Like I
Hmm.
can't tell you the number of stupid things I've in marketing where people be like, what are you doing right there? Well, it's a new experiment, and yeah. There's been so many, but there's a couple of names.
That's great. I
Um,
like that. I
I,
think like
Hope
for,
and I have
yeah,
studied a bunch of the same people,
right.
and
Absolutely.
then they've studied a bunch of the classics,
Yes.
and I've gone back through the decades and looked at some of the famous sales letters, like whether it's like the Wall Street Journal, the story of two young men, or
I'm not
the
familiar with that.
I highly recommend you look at that sales
You
letter.
told me about
It's a
the
classic
VSL,
one.
the end of America, right?
The End of America, that's a classic
I
one. I
listened to
think
that one on a walk after we had our
did
call
you?
that day. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a classic one from
Oh my
2012.
goodness.
That's a very controversial one because people consider it fear mongering, etc. And then there's a lot of
Right.
customers that were unhappy after that, and
Mhm.
so you got to be careful with copy that's like emotionally triggered that
Yeah,
triggering that
of
much.
course. Right.
But there's examples of copy that isn't that much triggering, but is still evokes emotion. Another famous one, I think, was Caples, John Caples, who wrote the famous headline, "They laughed at me when I sat down at the piano, but when I started to play," and it's like dot dot dot. And I'm paraphrasing that headline
Yeah.
because people can relate to that emotion of wanting to wanting to impress others, wanting
Hmm.
to show that they're capable of doing something that their peers didn't think they're capable of, right? So there's just a few words in that headline, but it's so powerful just unto itself because I heard that they had struggled to sell. I think it was a correspondence course or something, because at the time they didn't have like online courses or anything like that. No internet back then. And the previous copy for that was just talking about a piano course, just like very to the point. I don't remember exactly what it was, but that promotion, that campaign just blew it out of the water because it was
Yeah.
tapping into that emotion that people had. Were like, yeah, for why they might want to take up piano, they wanted to show their peers that they were capable of doing something that was genuinely impressive. Again, it's a form of
Yeah.
status, like we talked about, right?
Right. Wow.
But some of those come to mind. Did I answer your question?
You
I get
did. That's
excited
so
about
interesting.
some of these past campaigns.
Well, I always like, I mean, I always find it interesting that sort of process of like discovering certain people to learn from because I think like I got really lucky with, lucky, but I also put in a lot of work with finding sort of, my first sort of mentor who was my very first client who I still work with now, Scott Shang, who was one of my first podcast episodes. He plugged me into the Perry Marshall world, right? So Perry is like my big, he's like, I was thinking about this because I'm hosting a program with him right now called 0 to 100K. It's like basically like getting started into sort of stepping into entrepreneurship or, what's the best business for me to start right now? And Perry's whole idea behind answering that question is like, there is no one right answer to that. There's the business that makes the most sense for you and who you are uniquely in your unique talents and capabilities and skill set. And so it's fun for me because I get to be a host with him on that program, but like so much of my foundation is from Perry. And I was thinking about this yesterday. He's kind of like so I'm a big stand up comedy fan, right? Like I consume a lot of stand up comedy. And so in that world, obviously Joe Rogan has a massive platform with his podcast, right? And he's provided opportunities to so many of his friends who are comics, like Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer and Ari and some of the other guys. And so I've seen Perry do that with his platform. Like he has,
Yes.
provided so much opportunity to people that are now like clients of mine, but guys that like aren't, sort of like the well-known entrepreneurs like a Bezos or an Elon Musk or, Bill Gates or like these numbers get thrown around and people are like, those are like my mentors or my idols as an entrepreneur is Elon Musk. And it's like, it's just, he is the richest guy in the world. He's our unicorn. Like, there's nothing really that he could probably tell me right now that would have a big impact on like where I am in my life. Maybe there are some things, but like being able to like go to an entrepreneur or a person who is just either one living the life that I want to live or has the skill set that I want to learn and then being able to just sort of just extrapolate the information that they have and being able to apply it to my life. But it's cool for me because I've watched Perry, provide opportunity to Bob Rigneris, who wrote The Ultimate Guide to Facebook Advertising. And then he became a client. I got to build a funnel for it. And it's cool for me right now because he kind of just like plucked me and he's like, all right, like I'm a young up and coming comic. And he's like giving me an opportunity. It's cool for me to reflect and kind of sit back on it because again, I think I feel very fortunate that so much of my foundation of being an entrepreneur was built from him and his principles, and not sort of the, I didn't have to get a decade into my career and be like, oh my gosh, like so much of my what I believe to be true about business and entrepreneurship and marketing and all of this stuff in general. Now I don't got to unlearn all that stuff. Like I can build from a very seen reality almost for what it is. And I'm just I'm so thankful for it.
That's wonderful. Yeah, people like that are angels in our lives, and
Indeed.
Perry has given that type of platform to so many people. So we, yeah, definitely shout out to a hug from afar to
I mean,
Perry, the
that's how we got brought
great Perry
together.
Marshall. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, cause Perry, I mean, so yeah, let's talk about what you're doing now, the agency that you work with now, and sort of, I want to know like your day to day with that and what your opportunity looks like. But yeah, just again, quick shout out. So Alex McCarthy, who runs Clickmakers, who's the agency that Sunny gets to work with, yeah, was basically we got connected with Alex because I was part of Roundtable, and so was and so was Rob, and so we all got to come together, and that was what brought us in this relationship together. So like, it's just so true. He's like really he's putting so many with his platform at that level. Like you have so much leverage and power and value,
Hence
and
the
like
name Planet Perry, right?
Planet Perry,
It's kind of
indeed.
like its own world.
So it really is, and people that get attracted to Planet Perry are unique, interesting entrepreneurs, and like
The
some of the best
gravitational
people.
force of Planet Perry, indeed.
Undeniable. Undeniable. Yeah. So yeah, give me like what's your, I mean, I'm sure there's no like normal regular day in business. I mean, like in our
Just
industry.
stamping widgets, man. That's really it.
But yeah, talk me like
Stamp.
how where did you go from? Let's do that a little bit. Let's continue to. I want to backtrack a little bit. So you're the training program running IT. I still want to. I want to know like how you found yourself in this position now. So walk me through that a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate that I got into an industry that I came to love, which
Yeah.
in general was education. I've done so many different versions of education over time, and I even took a break and went and did tutoring because I just loved to teach,
Really?
and
Was it the
I
SAT
wanted,
like type of thing too?
yeah, I was
It
teaching
was.
test prep,
All right.
and
Nice.
I
Did you just kill your SAT then? Like, did you just crush your
not
score?
really because
No.
I had really intense anxiety, and I had
Oh shoot,
messed me
man.
up. I actually on the SAT I misnumbered an entire section,
No way,
and I sat and I realized it
dude.
like
Oh
I don't remember
no.
what, like 15 or 20 minutes into the sec, which every section is only like
Of
25
course.
or
Right.
whatever it is, 30 minutes. I was freaking out.
I'm sure that was good for your anxiety. My
I was
goodness.
so horrible, man. And it's not like I'm erasing all these and I'm trying to, I'm
Yeah,
like,
right.
this is horrible. So it's one of those things like you have to, like you remember it obviously as I'm sharing it now, but it's also a priceless thing because it's such a great experience to reflect on and then to practice being centered.
Yeah,
I didn't
right.
do a great job of
Wow.
being centered in that moment, but I
Your
tried,
perspective.
did my best.
Yeah, right.
So I kind of wanted to help other kids to not suffer as much as much as I did.
Oh
And speaking
gosh.
of that experience, the first thing I would talk to them about when I got to their house was the first time I was going to meet with them, and hardly anyone was excited. Like
Hmm.
it was mostly their parents that signed them up for this, and
Right.
they all they all had other things to do. They had baseball, or they had other things. They're like,
Of
I want to go
course.
and practice baseball.
Yeah.
I want to go and practice this other thing, or my instrument, or I have all this homework to do. Like, why are you here? No, they
Right.
didn't actually explicitly say that because they had some manners, but
Yeah. You could feel
a
it.
lot of kids didn't. Yeah, a lot of kids didn't
Yeah.
really want to be doing it.
Right.
Especially because I would start. I thought this was important. I was like, I don't want to get into this right away. Like all the material, we're going to get into that pretty soon, right? But my first question for you is, what is an expert? And
Wow.
I would just wait for them to answer that. Do you want to try answering that? You don't have to.
What is an expert? It's interesting, right? Because so much of like when I was coming up in the marketing world was like if you're an expert if you just know a little bit more than your client essentially, and that makes you an expert. And I think that word gets thrown around and misused a lot. It's interesting too because Scott Shang, again, who runs Find My Way Home, who I do a lot of consulting for, we talk about helping consumers that are looking to buy or purchase, get a home, they're going through the mortgage process, like talk to a mortgage expert. And those are like, we call them guideline geeks. Like they know all of the guidelines. They like, so many people that are applying for a mortgage end up in a call center with someone who's not very educated and doesn't really know how to push a file through unless it's like blue kind of status check mark. Like, you got credit score, you got income. And if it has any hair to the file, like, you kind of get lost in the process. That's really interesting. I don't even know how to answer that really off the top of my head.
Yeah, all good. I mean, I'm putting you on the spot, so I appreciate you
Yeah.
just even attempting that. And I put them on the spot too. And they would say things like, well, an expert is someone that knows a lot about something. I'm like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's true. An expert is someone who gets paid a lot. It's probably something
Yeah.
they're aspiring to.
Uh-huh.
um, yeah, or an expert is someone that is respected. I'm like, okay, that's true as well
Yeah.
in general.
Right.
Not always, but in general. And I said, well, what I'm really thinking about and how I would describe it to you as an expert is someone who has really strong pattern recognition in a particular area.
Uh-huh.
So I said, really, the only difference between me and you is that
Hmm.
on these questions that we're going to, review together and talk about how to answer these questions on this test that I can recognize patterns in these questions. Like I know how they're trying to trick you.
Wow.
And I'm going to show you how they're trying to trick you so that you'll have that pattern recognition too. And therefore, you'll become an expert at it.
Dude, that's great. I feel like I just read this somewhere. I feel like I just read like something about someone at a really high level is a great pattern recognition. Maybe was it this book? I'm reading Atlas Shrugged right now, Ayn Rand. And I think
Yeah.
it might have been in this. I don't know where it's from. I know that's like super top of mind right now. I just read something like that.
There's a lot
Sorry,
of
keep
talk about
going.
it
It's really
now
interesting.
because of AI. But in years past, like it wasn't really talked about that much, especially like with the advent of Chat GPT, etc.
Yeah, what a
What
trip.
are those AIs doing? They're consuming data, they're consuming information, they're developing associations between different types of information so that they can recognize patterns
Wow.
and then actually have some advanced ability to like recognize the pattern of what you're asking for and
Mm-hmm.
then to create their own pattern of a response that makes sense to a human being. And
Hmm.
they've just gotten so good at that it's like, oh my god, it feels like I'm actually even talking to a person in some cases.
Right.
That used to be called was called the Turing test by Alan Turing, a
Yep.
computer scientist, where
Yep.
if you couldn't distinguish that you're talking to a computer, then that would have passed the Turing test. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT is quite on that level yet, but it's certainly getting there.
Mm-hmm.
So this talk about pattern recognition is more prevalent than ever. But basically, I would define an expert like that. If you have pattern recognition, like you
Wow.
and I went out to play baseball, first of all, you'd have a hard time getting off your knees because you'd be like laughing so hard at me because I could barely hit the dang ball. And then there's there's this time in high school where we were playing baseball in PE, and I was getting terrified. I was like, I was praying, like, please God, do not let anybody hit the
Mm.
ball
Ball always
anywhere
finds
in this
you.
direction
Yep.
or like in
Baseball
this
gods
part of
now.
the field
Yep.
because this hit it slightly that way or hit it slightly that way because I just had no confidence that I could catch a ball.
Yep.
And of course, guess what happened?
Of course.
Somebody hits this
Line.
long fly ball.
Oh no.
It's coming straight to me, and I'm like, oh my God. And it's a sunshiny day, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna make my
Uh-huh.
best attempt at this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this is all I remember. And then
Uh-oh.
after that, I remember being on the ground,
No, dude.
waking up, and there was like four people standing around me going, are you okay?
Oh my
So apparently the ball came down and hit me in the head and knocked me out.
God.
So
Too
here's
funny, dude.
here's some of my memories from high school. So suffice it
Yeah.
to say that I did not have good pattern recognition in baseball or softball.
That's too
But
funny, dude.
whereas you'd be like crushing it. You'd be like, "Oh my God, this is awesome! I get to play baseball. I get to
Uh-huh.
I get to pitch. I get to catch, and I get
Too
to hit the
funny.
ball." And like you'd be having fun, right? And
Hmm.
so, but you could probably teach me a lot. Like if I went out on the field with you, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, actually your batting stance is off. You're almost always going to strike out if you're swinging that way."
Yeah.
I don't know these things, whereas you do, and it'd be great to learn from you.
Wow.
So that's all I was. I wanted all the kids, and I want anybody I interact with to feel that way. Like, hey, I
Hmm.
know all this analytics stuff, or
Hmm.
I know this, and this with copy, and like how to put these things together, how to put
Wow.
together funnel structure, and what tends to work for this kind of offer, and all these things. But all of that is just pattern recognition.
Yeah.
So like you're asking me like, what do I do at Alex's agency? A lot of it is that where I'm just like taking all the experience I've had and looking at it, every funnel, every offer for every different type of client. We have clients across all these different industries, whether it's
Right.
e-com or SaaS or info products and all kinds of stuff, and even hybrids of those industries, and looking at and seeing what's likely to work. How do we craft this? And if we are going to test a certain type of traffic or a certain type of ads, a certain type of landing page, and this kind of funnel and this whatever, right? How do we test? Like, how do we actually write a test plan that's going to make sense? It's not going to be too high risk, and we're going to know exactly what we're testing, how much we're spending, what is success, what is not success. When do we cut it off early because it doesn't look like it's going to get to success?
Jeez.
There's just so much that goes into that.
Right.
So being a like a type of personality that just likes to connect lots of dots, it's been a cool thing for me. It's still challenging, and that's one of the things that makes it interesting is because if it's not challenging, then you
Not
do
worth
feel like you're
doing.
stamping widgets, and it's definitely not stamping widgets, right?
That's really interesting. Yeah, I feel like so many people's like perception of what marketing is, like what you just described, is like, I mean, we get to be mad scientists. We get to like
Oh
experiment
yeah,
and
totally.
test. It's so cool.
Yeah, and experience comes from experiments, and
Wow.
then the pattern recognition comes from the experience. So having that experiments mindset is so huge for just life in general. Like
Wow, dude.
how many experiments have you run to get the experience, and then have the pattern recognition
Yeah.
so that you can help other people with anything that they're wanting help with. And the more you help
Right.
other people, the more it reinforces those patterns in your own mind. And you're like,
Of
okay, I
course.
know I can explain something to them.
Right.
That's why teaching is such a powerful thing.
Jeez. Wow. That's great. What are like outside of the agency work? Do you do any sort of, I mean, like I know helping and teaching is such a passion of yours. Like, what does that look like outside of what you're doing with clickmakers?
Yeah, I do some mentoring at the same time. I've gotten really into trading, and
Really? Okay.
I still suck at it, but talk about pattern recognition. I probably won't get knocked out and wind up on the field with people standing over me, thankfully. But you get knocked out in other ways. Like you lose money really fast if you're not good enough at the pattern recognition, or if you're not fast enough at the execution
Right.
when you do see the pattern.
Yeah.
So I'm still trading on a simulator and just
Okay.
building that up.
Okay.
There's so much that
What's
goes
the
into it.
timeline? Like, how long have you been doing that?
Um, So I got into financial markets first when I was in high school. Like this was
Right.
decades ago now, but
Yep.
I put it on hold, and then a few years later I picked it up again to some degree, and I just wasn't successful. And I was trading options and doing some things, and I didn't really know that much. But like every couple of years, I would dabble and be like, "Is this?" I was kind of like testing myself. Is this the right time in my life
Yeah.
to get into it? And it just never quite was. It was always
Mm.
something else that was more important.
Mm-hmm.
And then last year, in like it was about May ish, I just felt like it's time for me to like go into it come back to it because I had been away for a long time, and then go into it in a much deeper level,
Mm-hmm.
and then actually even start practicing day trading because I had never practiced
Okay.
that kind of intraday trading before.
Yeah.
And so when you do that, you're then looking for an approach that fits your personality because there's so many different approaches to trading out there. You want to find something that fits how you naturally think and operate.
Mm-hmm.
There's things that are, like scalping, for example, is really fast in and out. Whereas there's even swing trading within the day where you're going to stay in a position for longer than you would in a scalp. You might be in it for 20 minutes. You might be in it for an hour. You might be in it for a couple hours. There's
Right.
all these different variations. And there's people that are pure price action traders, and people are using indicators. There's people using some automation, people not using any automation. There's so
Dude,
many things that
sheesh. Right.
then you have to decide between stocks and forex and futures and options and crypto. Like, so all the different instruments you can potentially trade. There's so many
Wow.
different decisions to make.
Right.
And it's beautiful in that you have so much variety, but then of course
Yeah.
the curse of that is like the paradox of choice, where you have all this variety and it's like you're trying to figure out like what is it I want to do.
Right.
And then within all of that, like which techniques, et cetera, specifically you're going to apply, and then formulate a trading plan that says exactly what am I getting in, what am I getting out, how much can I lose, like all the different risk parameters and entry and exit parameters and there's a lot of things you need to define
Right.
in a trading plan. So it's just been this whole process. And so I'm still on trading on sim and not profitable yet, but I've learned so much about myself and what might work for me. And the thing that's really cool about trading is that
Yeah.
aside from this pursuit of potential profits, which everyone wants to make money at some point, but it's this amazing path of self mastery because you're having to exercise so much discipline
Yep.
in the process. And if you're not disciplined, the market is gonna take you out pretty dang fast.
Right.
So it's this amazing feedback loop because you
Mm.
can get into a trade long, meaning you're expecting something to go up, and then you get this big red bar down. Like 2 seconds later, it's like it doesn't matter how much journaling you've done, how much meditation you've done, how many personal growth workshops you've been to, how much healing work you've done, how much
Mm.
hours of therapy you've done.
Right.
All of that is helpful. Like all of that does factor in as helpful. But like when you have that freak out moment and that big red bar appears on the screen and is dropping hard and fast, what are you going to do?
Mm.
Because like if you actually went into the trade prepared, then you have a stop loss like in mind, but or actually placed, but are you going to honor that?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to keep your commitment to lose, like to actually take that loss? Like
Right.
the discipline is a huge thing. It's just like
Wow.
you go to the gym, like, yeah, man, it's raining today. I'm cold. I'm
Mm-hmm.
tired. Been working late hours lately. Am I going to
Right.
go? And I got this leg day.
That's the conversation I've been having in my head. Today's leg day for me, and I'm like, I'm gonna go.
And
I
it's
know.
okay if you say, actually, you know what, tomorrow
Yeah.
I'm gonna move leg day to tomorrow. And that's
Right.
actually okay as long as you're not like cheating yourself. Like
Yeah.
if you're being strategic and saying, it actually might be harmful to my health to do leg day
Right.
today
Yeah.
because I'm just not up for it. But
Right.
tomorrow I get better rest, my heart rate
Mm-hmm.
variability is better, whatever. I'm gonna do it tomorrow.
Right.
That's okay. And it's
Mm-hmm.
you got to make those decisions in trading as well. So the path to self mastery is so key because
Wow.
it's amazing, intense game.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're automating, if you're writing code and you're placing that like algo into the market and you're
Yeah.
watching what it's doing, you're still gonna
Mm-hmm.
freak out when it does something where you're like you're losing money.
Right. Of course.
so
Absolutely.
so either way, it functions on so many levels to help me grow as a person, and then
Yeah.
also to potentially get to the point where it's another income source,
Mm-hmm.
and also just the game of it and knowing so many other people who are on that same path of wanting to improve themselves and get and master themselves, and at the
Right.
same time conquer this incredible challenge because you're competing against so many of the world's best people, like what we do as marketers
Mm-hmm.
in the financial markets. You're you're competing against the world's best,
Interesting.
the Wall Street traders, the institutional guys, the people
Yeah.
with decades of experience, and
Right.
it is this fairly even playing field. It's not
Mm-hmm.
completely even because people have advantages with servers right next to the New York Stock Exchange. There are certain advantages that they have. They have
Yeah.
billions of dollars, etc. But it's never been a more even playing field for those of us who have no experience to come in and actually try to
Hmm.
win a game that's played by the most advanced people in the world.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And I've been thinking about that recently too, because like it trips me out that like the game of business that I play is the same as like a Perry Marshall or these guys that are playing at a really high level. Like technically it's the same, but they're operating at, a much higher leverage point than I am, because of their resources. And there's so many things. But like let me pose that question to you. Like, what do you think it is that do you think that those traders that are operating at that level, why are they at that level? Is it because they have more mastery over themselves and they have more discipline? Is it the experience? Is it a combination of things? Like, what's your thought on, what separates someone like, that's playing at maybe an amateur level that ends up getting to a professional and beyond kind of all-star? Like, what are those components and factors of that?
I think it's from what I've seen, it's like almost anything else, whether it's playing an instrument or playing a sport, they usually have a coach. They usually have,
Interesting.
yeah, they usually have someone pointing
Wow.
out
I love that
all
answer.
sorts of different ways that they can get better,
Yeah.
analyzing their numbers because so they're usually journaling,
Mm-hmm.
even if even if that's like syncing their trades to a platform, but oftentimes it's like actually making notes about each trade and why they did it, what were they thinking, what
Mm-hmm.
was their risk level, why did they get in and why did they get
Jeez.
out, like all these things, like really deeply reflecting
Yeah.
and then iterating on that every day and then staying with it for the long term, going like no matter what it takes, I'm going to do this because
Yeah.
there's a lot of stories of traders. You can go on YouTube and find these stories of really successful traders. This one guy said he lost money for 6 years straight.
Whoa.
And he was just desperate. Like people get to the point where
Whoa.
they're just desperate, and everyone in their life is questioning their freaking sanity
Of course.
because they're like, "What are you doing?" First of all, like marketing, it's not a very respected profession.
Yeah.
They
Right.
think so. You're trying to be a professional gambler. I
Uh-huh.
mean, there
Basically.
actually is value to what that craft is. You're adding liquidity in the markets, and you're
Mm-hmm.
helping other people to trade because you're taking their side of the other side of the trade that they're trying to do, etc. But there, and that's aside from all the self mastery stuff that we talked about that most people don't think about.
Mm-hmm.
But they stuck with it. They said, no matter what it takes, I'm going to continue experimenting with different approaches until I
Wow.
find something that suits my personality.
Mm-hmm.
When I find that, and that's a combination of technique as well as the market that you're going to be trading, and really narrowing in on that. Some people do nothing but trade like S&P 500 futures, and that's the
Right.
only market they trade.
Sheesh.
Some people are like, they trade the S&P, they trade the Russell, and they trade um, the Dow Jones futures. Like they'll trade three different things, and that's all they trade. Some people only the 30-year T-bond. That's all they trade,
Mm-hmm.
and they trade it only with a specific technique, and only by looking at the what they call the depth of market in the order book, and only when a certain thing happens in the order book, then I scalp that, and it's like a 3 second in and out trade because the computers will take the rest of the volume that they're trying to get, and they have to be in it in those 3 seconds, otherwise they make no money. But
Crazy.
like that's the thing that makes them in love with it. That's
Yeah.
what they love to do, and that
Right.
they get so good at that that they make a living on that.
Wow. They like have
So
cornered their little pocket of like that market
yeah,
over that world
exactly.
and
And
like
so
I'm
the
gonna
you can
master
talk to
this.
100 different traders, and
Sheesh.
you will get 100 different answers about exactly what they're doing.
Dude.
And
Wow.
because it has to suit them, and then they have to practice it and practice it and practice it until
I
they
love it.
master it.
Yes.
And I mean, statistically, you have to have an edge. So the
Wow.
math has to bear that out.
Right.
But you also have to get so good at executing on that edge that you
Mm-hmm.
actually are able to take advantage of that edge and to capitalize on that. And
Yeah.
that's where so much of the iteration to practice, and then the self-reflection, and then even deeper self-reflection with the help of a coach,
Right.
all of that comes together. So
Jeez.
they train, and I have this mindset, and a lot of those top traders have the mindset that professional traders are like professional athletes. They train like a
Mm.
professional athlete, including
Mm-hmm.
even off the screen, like you might say on a professional, like off the field or off the court, but off the
Mm-hmm.
screen,
Mm-hmm.
they go and do all kinds of things for their health. So one of the
Yes.
most interesting questions you can ask a trader is like, what is your routine, your
Ah,
daily routine? Because you want to know like exactly what they're doing with their sleep. Like I know you've got the Aura Ring, like a lot of them are wearing these
of course.
biofeedback devices.
Yep.
They are they have health coaches, they have
Mm-hmm.
nutritional programs in place,
That's so
they
interesting.
have very specific meditation is very, very common
Yep.
among traders, like 20, 10, 20, 30 minutes a day. Some
Mm-hmm.
are doing it morning, some are doing it at night as well. Um, very specific amounts of time with family and friends, not staying up past a certain hour. They have all kinds of guidelines in place in their life. They're guideline
Wow.
geeks to have that structure. That's what Darren. I think it was Darren LaCroix, the world champion of public speaking year 2000 and Toastmasters. I think it was his mentor that said this. I don't remember exactly who it was, but he's the one I heard it from.
Hmm.
And he was talking about writing a speech. He was saying good structure doesn't freeze you. Good structure frees you.
Ah, haha,
And so
yeah.
that's how it is for the traders too. Like they have all this structure in their lives
Wow.
so that it frees them to find their flow
Jeez.
when they need to be the most on point. The most intense situations in the markets. The markets are moving so fast, and the
Right.
markets don't wait for anybody. Right, the markets are moving so fast to find
Yeah.
that and capitalize on that in the moment.
Man.
That's when all that other preparation and that structure,
Yeah.
that's when they capitalize on it. And these are the people that are
Jeez.
making, some of them are making seven figures a year.
Of course.
So
Goodness.
I'm definitely not at that level yet.
Then there's two things there that I really liked. It was like one of like one like being finding an edge and being able to capitalize on that edge, and like it goes back to, I mean, it's what Perry's take on the 0 to 100K, but it's what you said too about like developing a trading philosophy is like it needs to make sense to you, like it needs to fit you. And I love
Exactly.
that because it's like there is no one perfect trading strategy. It's like there's one that you need to find for
Right.
you, and like it's the same thing with a business. It's like there is no good or great business. There's a good and great business out there for you, and
For
finding
you.
your edge and capitalizing on that
Yeah.
is the key. And it's like, it's so much more of like a, like interpersonal sort of experience. Like I think that's where I found some, I wouldn't even like maybe harmony in like my business, was where I stopped looking externally for the answers of like looking at an ad online of like a guy selling me like a automated cash flow system, instead of like thinking about that. And I was like, well, I have some like innate unique capabilities and talents and skills. Like I think it's a little bit more of like an internal kind of soul searching process almost than that. And like I found, as I personally developed and grew in that sense, and like professionally I started to figure some things out. So I really
Yeah.
love that. And the other thing that you said too about like, I have had this thought being an athlete that like I approach business, and this is me playing my game right now. Like I think about this as like approaching as an athlete. It's like when I'm on and I'm working, this is my, this is my arena, this is my field, this is my time. And when I'm not doing this, I am resting or learning or earning or trading, like all those types of things, like, you know, the sleep that I get and the food that I eat and the time that I spend with, you know, recreation time with family and friends, and like the sensory deprivation and float therapy and the sauna and the journaling and the meditating, like all of that plays into me then getting to like perform at my highest level, my best level. Like having a plant right here makes me feel good. And like that's part of just
Yes.
like creating a good environment. Like
Totally.
I think it's so interesting because so much of, again, I don't like to make generalizations with it, but I'm going to do it a little bit of like, I think so many people are searching for like that work life balance, right? Like who I am at work. And then I'm like, you know, looking for a balance. And I just, this is something that I learned from Ty Lopez, is like a, an integrated life, where like the different components of sort of the, like the different system or like little pieces form this kind of bigger whole. And how I am operating to my family, my friends, to my clients, to my, you know, friends, to what I do when I'm sleeping and eating, it all has an impact on itself, and ultimately getting me closer to my you know, ideal life or whatever that is going to be. But I think like there is no, like I have no separation with all that stuff. Like how I train and how I eat and how I lift and all of that has an impact in me getting to do the things that like ultimately bring me more energy. And because I'm happy and at peace with a lot of those things, then I can go and like focus on just giving more of that to the other people around me. And it's like you said, it's just as, it's like the pattern recognition of like when I give a lot of that good energy, I get it back to me, and then it feeds me when I get to go, you know, travel or explore or do some of that stuff. So those are really big, like key things that I think, you know, that you touched on, that I just, yeah, I really want to cement it home, because I think that's a really big part of my life, like that I've continued to just to cultivate and focus on.
Yes. And it's even more magical when every one of those things are not just like means to an end, like
Yeah.
to get back to the screen or to get back on the field. It's like
Right.
if the meditation itself becomes so joyful in every moment,
Mm-hmm.
or if the sauna becomes so joyful in every moment, the lifting becomes so joyful in every moment,
Mm-hmm.
the time with the therapist becomes so joyful in every
Yeah,
moment,
yeah, right.
the running, whatever you're doing,
Yeah,
the showering,
right.
the
Yes.
nutritional program, like if every one of those things becomes so joyful
Mm-hmm.
in every moment,
That
then
just
then there's
becomes
true
the goal.
joy. Then there's true joy in the journey.
Yes.
And then you will perform even more, even better, because
Yes.
you just have that much joy in the whole process. Like
Right.
Kobe was one of my ideals, even though he was not a very nice person to a lot of people. And I didn't like that part of him because I'm not like that. But and I think he got that from Michael Jordan, or he got a lot of things from Michael Jordan.
Certainly. Of
But I idolized his work ethic and
course.
how he was just constantly improving. And
Yeah.
I'd like to work. I'd love working every day,
Right.
but I know not everyone does. Everyone
Yeah.
has their own cadence, their own flow, right?
Right.
But and I don't have the engine in me that he had, where it's like 20 hours a day and he's just 3 hours of sleep, go score 60 points in a game. I wasn't born with that, but with whatever I am born with and the work ethic I have, to your point about having it be integrated in your life,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the balance is different for every person. And
Yeah.
to find what works for you, where you feel happy about your day,
Mm-hmm.
that's what it's about. And you
That's
like
it.
you're someone who invests the time to actually go on the journey and find what works for you and find your strengths and find ways to serve others in a way that you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And the people who are sitting on the surface and skimming the surface and saying, I just want that automated push button system to
Mm-hmm.
generate affiliate benefits or whatever it is, they don't get that joy in the journey. Maybe hopefully
Yeah.
they'll find some joy elsewhere. But my experience has been that most people who think that way don't really find much joy in life
Yeah.
because they're constantly just searching for some easy way out of things instead of
Right.
finding joy in the work.
Yep. Yep. That's something that I learned from. I mean, I think it became cemented from Alex Hormozy last year. I was consuming a lot of his content, and he basically was just saying like work is the goal. Like that's it. Letting go of like this. I'm doing this because of this, whatever abstract outcome. It's like that's not, me lifting is just because like I like it. I want to lift. Like I think the best illustration of it is the book The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. Like that whole idea behind that book is just getting 1% better every single day. Like that's the
I've
mastery.
been
It's
hearing about that book.
Sonny, I think that's one that you got to add to your list because
Okay, it's on my list.
I love it because it like
It might
that.
already be on my list, but I'm definitely gonna put it on my list if it's not.
It's like it's one of those books like I love those kind of principle foundational concepts because it applies to getting better in your health, just 1%, like doing, a 30-minute workout 3 4 days a week and just focusing on that. Or 1%, like, that's compound interest in money. It's getting 1% better with like reading and reading 10 pages of book, every day. Or like 10 minutes with your spouse or your relationship every single day, like sitting down and spending another 10 minutes of just being present and focusing on that. Like that 1% of letting go of like I think it's important to design or to be thinking with an end goal or sort of vision in mind. But then the whole idea of that is to come back to like, okay, I have reverse engineered it to where I am now, and this is the path that I'm on to get there. And then just relinquish the expectation of reaching that goal and just focus on, all right, I'm just going to get better every single day. Because then it just comes down to quality reps and consistency and being resilient and not really relying on like your momentum or like happiness around it, because it's gonna suck. Like there are gonna be days where you don't want to go to the gym, but if you're just like, all right, I just that 1%, like that's it. I'm just, and that compounds in so many different aspects and areas of your life. And you're right, and you're 100% right. Like when you're just focused on this outcome, there's another book that I've been hearing a lot about, like called The Gap to Gain or something like that. That one's been on my list for a little while. And the whole idea behind that book is like you're here and you want to get there, and this space in between that is causing a lot of friction and like unhappiness essentially, because you're just like I am only seeing that area of like where I'm not at yet, instead of being like, well, I used to only be able to do 5 pull-ups and now I can do 6 and 7 and 8 and 9. I'm just adding one more every week. Like that's the idea behind it. It's just like I'm trying to just get better 1% every single day. And I think I have found a lot of solace in that, because like I can, at the end of the day, I can be like, all right, like I did what I needed to do. I read, I meditated, I did my thing, I checked on my family. Like I'm just getting a little bit better every single day, and I'm only really at that point competing against yourself.
Yeah, and sock is the root word of success, in my opinion.
Amen.
I don't think it really is, but that's how I remind myself. And I've been knocked out by a softball or baseball, whatever it was. Uh, I can probably improve from there.
I got 2 questions for you. And I already know I need to have you back on because there's so much more that I want to. I mean, anybody that's listening or getting to watch this, like you can just tell, like your charm and just like how, like you're such a fun guy to talk to. Seriously, man. Like I'm so appreciative of it. One is, what are you reading right now? What are you reading right now?
What am I reading right now? Well, I've got I got the Kindle for one thing, but a
Okay.
bunch of things on there. But this is a book my friend and my current coach who's helping me
Find
learn
joy in
learn building in
chaos.
public. His name is Kemal Chung, and he wrote a book called Find Joy in Chaos.
All
And
right.
this is specifically about how to build an audience, like a really engaged and passionate audience on Twitter.
Okay.
It's got a really philosophical title, which is interesting, but it's
Yeah.
also very practical in that chaos is Twitter. And most people, when they go on Twitter or social media in general, they they find that they're getting caught up in the chaos, and it's like it's overwhelming. It's like, well, what
Hmm.
do we exactly do to connect with people? And
Yeah.
we have this whole process where he teaches people how to first make friends and
Hmm.
talk to people and support them and like organically just build over time. There's all these different phases to it,
Wow. Nice.
but it's so authentic and organic that I just really appreciate that. And so he's coaching me on Twitter audience growth, but also broader than that, he's a specialist in what's called building in public, which is how to
Hmm.
share about something that you have an idea about. So you think
Ah.
about lean startup, that whole mindset is what they call customer development, where you're going through that build, measure, learn loop, where you
Hmm.
have an idea, but you don't just blurt out your idea. You go and you do these interviews with people um, who have the problem, and you ask them about their problem. You ask them what they're doing to solve their problem, how much
Hmm.
money and time and energy they've invested in attempting to solve their problem and fix
Right.
that. What are they currently doing to solve the problem? What else? What are all the various things that they've tried? You learn all kinds of things about their problem and what they've done to achieve it. And it gives you an idea of how much is it worthwhile for me to attempt to create something here? Is it something that someone would actually buy? Are they really serious about this problem? Is it really better? And in what ways is it better than all the things that they've tried? Does it fix all those things? Is it a path
Ah,
they
yeah.
could actually embrace after not embracing those other ways of changing, right?
Right.
Could they actually embrace this thing that I'm thinking about
Wow.
building? But you don't tell them what you're going to be building. So there's another great book called The Mom Test by Ron Fitzpatrick about all the specific types of questions to ask. And and then there's like jobs to be done. Those types of philosophies or
Hmm.
methods, they're really frameworks of how to go about understanding people's problems. And then building in public takes it to another level where you're going to now go into a public space, oftentimes social media these days, and you're going
Hmm.
to announce that I have, I'm working on this thing, and you keep it semi vague, like just you're trying to solve this problem, and then you're going to share about the progress in public, and you're going to be asking questions in public so that you can get feedback from various people who are interested
Hmm.
in solving that problem. And so what you end up doing is you can build an audience over time from people being interested in you solving that problem for them, and you can build community around that. You build relationships in that process because there's a lot of one-on-one and just really nurturing those relationships. So it's a
Sheesh.
very it is intensive, but at the same time, you have this quality of connection that many marketing campaigns are missing.
Yeah.
Like I know when I've just run ads for certain campaigns, I did put a lot of time into it and put a lot of time into the funnel and that stuff. But when you run the ad, people don't know who you are.
Hmm.
And so they just leave a comment like, hey, this sounds like a scam. I don't know who this person is, and that kind of stuff. And it's just really unfulfilling,
Yeah.
even though it has its place in being able to scale and being able to control traffic volume. All of those things are benefits to it.
Right.
But if you can combine organic traffic with a quality approach, like what Kaman is talking about, or other people are talking about, with organic audience building, whether building in public or whatever other method they're using, and pay traffic to then amplify the stuff that you find to be working, the type of messaging, the type of offers, et cetera, that you find to be working from people that know, like, and trust you.
Yep.
Don't amplify that with the paid stuff. To me, that's where the magic is, where you're getting,
Sheesh.
it's almost like someone would call it chocolate and peanut butter, or peanut butter and jelly, whatever it is. Those two things working together, 1+1 = 3. That's synergy. And so many of us are focused like only entirely on paid or only on organic, and
Right.
it's that synergy that's missing in between. But
Wow.
you asked me a book I'm reading, and so Kaman's book is definitely one of them.
Okay.
And I've got a bunch of other
I
books in
figured you would.
Matt Basak's Emails That Sell. I haven't gotten into this
Yep.
one yet.
I violated the four agreements. I made an assumption, but I knew you were going to be a reader.
This one is really good. This was Dan Kennedy's former business partner, Bill Glazer,
Yeah, I
outrageous
know, Bill. Yeah, yeah.
multi-step
Okay.
campaigns.
That's new to
This one is
me.
really cool because they got so many of the world's top marketers to write a chapter each in this
Oh, that's
about a
awesome.
crazy cool campaign that they did, and they
No
actually
way.
outlined how to do the campaign.
What?
So,
That's going
and
on
they
my
had a whole
list.
event down in San Diego in 2018 that I went to, where every one of the authors in here, and Ryan
Awesome.
Dice and Matt Basak and everyone
Yep.
was in the same room.
Man.
Russell Brunson came and sat down right in front of me
You
with his
were
wife.
at that you were at that mastermind? Dude.
It wasn't a mastermind, but it was just an event that you could buy
The
tickets
event?
to, and
Right, right, right.
they were all there. And so
Crazy.
each one of them got up on stage and
That's so
shared.
crazy.
And a lot of them, speaking of masterminds, a lot of them were in Bill Glazer's mastermind group
Yeah.
years ago, like
Yeah.
before they got famous.
Yeah.
They were in his mastermind group, and
Yeah.
then they became big, and now they're coming in. They came back and spoke at his event, and
Crazy.
they put their ideas, their own campaigns in this book.
I know that's
So
how Bob, who I mentioned earlier in this podcast, who's a big part of Planet Perry, I'm pretty sure that's how he met either his business partner, or I know how he met Ryan Dice, who's obviously founder of Digital Marketer. Yeah,
Yeah.
they met in Bill Glazer's mastermind. So cool.
Yeah. I mean, those guys are legends now, right?
Legends. Yeah.
Um, yeah, one of my friends recently spent time with Perry at his house in Vegas, and just really amazing, right?
So cool.
And then this one is a classic as well. Dan Kennedy's No BS trust-based marketing. It's
Absolutely.
anything that goes to like how do we actually generate trust, especially in this super untrusting world. You mentioned Perry, not Perry Marshall, but Perry Belcher.
Mm-hmm.
He did a event. This was several years ago now, but one of the things he said was it's never been harder to get a first sale. But he
Hmm.
said it's never been easier to get a second sale because once you
Hmm.
get that person's trust,
Yeah.
then you have a real
Wow.
relationship with them. And he openly admits that he did some like really unscrupulous things. Like he went to, I think he went to jail for it for a while, and he
Sheesh.
learned a ton of lessons from that. And he's really evolved. Like we all evolve as people, and it was just cool to see him share those the stories and the lessons, and especially someone who's that good at marketing,
Mm-hmm.
to share how they not only distill that lesson from their life experience, but then how all the specific ways that they apply that in building a funnel and building a campaign, building a
Yep.
business,
Right.
building relationships with people. Like, how do
Hmm.
you really build that relationship? Digital marketers have been around for years and years now, and they have amazing reputation, amazing relationships. A lot of
Yep.
us are customers for how long has it been since I've been a customer? It feels like more than 10 years or
Yeah,
something
I'm
like
going
that.
on a
It's just
decade.
been a long, it's been a long
Yeah,
time,
right.
right? So these are the types of companies to aspire to. But I got a whole stack of books here, and
I
then
love it.
I love um, I love ebooks, digital books. So I got the Kindle now, and
Okay.
I listen to so much stuff. I have Scribd audio book subscription. It's a whole
Mm-hmm.
subscription where you get access to lots of things, including audiobooks and YouTube Premium. So I'm just listening to audios all the time and just
All
constantly
right.
consuming stuff. There's so many different things. I can't pick like one book, but it's like one book depending on like what I'm into at the time.
I'm with you. That's how I read too. I'm reading
Yeah.
multiple right now. So I keep my normal reading list on my desk right here. So I'm reading Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged. She also wrote The Fountainhead, which I loved. Rob recommended this book, What I Learned Losing $1 Million. Like basically like managing risk and sort of how you got a little bit too a little bit too like drinking your own Kool-Aid in a sense of like I know what I'm doing. This is something that
That's
Perry
huge.
recommended. This one's called A Mathematician's Apology, and this is like really it's interesting. Like for me, math is like the like when you strip away the fluff of life, numbers don't lie, right? I mean, you track analytics right all day. I mean, that's just marketing in general. Like I think math to me is unleashed a lot of like answers in life of like how I got my weight under control when I was younger and I was not in good shape was basically just calories in, calories out. It was just math. It was just numbers. Like that just doesn't lie. Like same thing with getting stronger in the gym. It's just, more numbers. The numbers are going up in the weight that you're moving. Like that's progressive overload. That's you just build muscle. Like it's the same sort of thing. So that book is really interesting. I mean, quite it's a thin book, but the diction is kind of dense for me. So I spend some time going back and forth on it. And the last one, I always like to end a day with I learned this from Ty Lopez too, like a biography or an autobiography. So I'm reading Shoe Dog. This is Phil Knight's book. And so when I was at Oregon, I actually met him because I mean I'm playing University of Oregon. We were always get to be
Oh
on the
wow.
field.
I
We were
didn't
on
know
the
that.
field with our recruits at football games for the baseball team. We'd always bring recruits on the field. And so he has got like his own booth or like private box at University of Oregon.
Oh, he's a legend.
And whenever like they're, crushing teams, like he'll get to call plays. But obviously he went to U of O and that's where, that's so much like Nike University. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
reading that right now. But I operate the same way. Like I'm usually bouncing in and out of a lot of books, and especially like it's having like the bookshelf right there. Like if I'm something pops up or I want to learn something, like I'll just be like, "Where's that book?" And I'll just pull it and read a chapter real quick. Like, yeah, I don't know for what it is, but I've always been obsessed with reading, learning, and I always this is something I wanted to say earlier was like I think that I've had a pursuit of like or just like a curiosity around learning and education, and so much of like my clients and businesses are almost like the vehicles or the playground for me to like have a real life action sort of responsibility and accountability and have like real results around applying that knowledge. Like that gives me a constraints around like okay, I learned this thing of like how to run an ad campaign, and now build like getting clients and getting businesses like is then just more of like getting to hone the skills in like a real life environment. It's just more pursuit of learning. Like I've always felt like, man, I get paid to learn all day. Like that's such a cool thing to be able to like kind of sit back and say.
It really is. Yeah, marketing is amazing that way. And really the journey that the prospect takes,
Yeah.
it is a learning journey.
Yes. Well
uh,
said.
if you go back to Joseph Campbell, it's you can
Mm-hmm.
frame the entire thing as the hero's journey.
Right.
The hero is someone who doesn't necessarily want to go through transformation and learn,
Mm.
but they need to experience that transformation to get to the
Yeah.
result they want. They have to embrace that and go on that journey. But my opinion is that, and I think the world is going this way, is that marketing is going to become more and more experiential.
Hmm.
So because what the prospect needs to experience is progress, they need to feel like they are making some kind of progress towards that vision. And that's what the whole idea of a lead magnet is,
Mm-hmm.
which I think Dean Jackson came up with. I think Ryan Dice came up with the word lead magnet, or the
Mm.
phrase lead magnet, and
Right.
Dean Jackson came up with the phrase squeeze page and came up with the concept of
Mm-hmm.
that. But just history on that. But what they were all trying to do, and even Frank Kern back in like 08, 09 was talking about results in advance. And
Mm.
people use that phrase now, but first heard Frank Kern talk about that, where he had worked on some campaign for a big dating launch, and his wife at the time was making fun of him. He's like, you know nothing about you know nothing about women. How are you going to help these guys?
Yeah.
so, so he's like, yeah, she's right. uh, so how am I going to help these guys, and how am I going to do
Mm.
this launch um, for? I think it was Neil Strauss at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was the actual guru. And
Yep.
so what they did was they would give away these tips they gave them one tip, like a pre-launch campaign. They
Yeah.
would do like three different things to help you feel progress, to help you actually
Right.
experience progress. And the first thing they would do is like, here's how you go and cold approach a woman, and
Mm.
here's something you can say to her so that she would actually have a conversation with you, or something
Right.
like that. And then the guys would be like, oh my God, the guys who actually tried it would be like, oh my God, this actually worked. Now, what's
Yeah.
the next thing? Like after she says, hey,
Mm-hmm.
she starts talking to me, like, what do I do?
Right.
And so then they teach like, okay, well, if you get the conversation, then like, here's how you ask for her number. Like if it actually goes well, and like the specific technique. And then, so the guys who try that, they're like, oh my God, it worked. Like, now what do I do? Now I got to go out with her. Now I got to call her. Like I got to do, I don't know what to do. So they gave him like a third thing, like, okay, now here's what you do. And I don't remember what that was, but
Hilarious.
what happened was they got results
Yep.
before they had to part with any kind of money. They had to
Right.
make a major commitment.
Right.
They got results in advance. And the way I
Wow.
say it is they had an experience, and a real world experience of progress towards a vision they had for themselves, whether
Yep.
the vision was having a girlfriend or having a wife, whatever it was,
Right.
or just having fun, whatever the vision was, they had actual experience towards that. And so the more we help our prospects to engage in immersion learning, getting actual experiences of progress, the more we don't have to apply fancy marketing tactics like
Mm.
the copy, etc. It all helps because like the more we know about writing effective copy, the greased chute, as John Carlton says, where like they just slide down it and it's
Yep.
so easy to consume.
Right.
The more we know about that, like the more we make it easy for them, because
Yeah.
we're not creating friction in their own minds, because we understand what it takes to not create friction in people when you're
Mm.
talking to them. But the actual experience of progress is the thing that makes them want to say, oh, wow, how do I get more from you?
Mm.
How can I do more with you? And if you don't actually have anything more, they actually get upset.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, well,
Wow.
what do you mean you don't have more? Or like, as soon as you create more, you let me know,
Yeah.
because
Right.
they can't end here. This is crazy. Like, so like for us, for that to be our standard as marketers, where
Yes.
people desire so much
Yeah.
to have a more of an experience than they already had with us, and for us to
Right.
deliver such an amazing experience in their lives towards progress, towards a vision they have, where they're just
Demanding
so
more. Yeah. Right.
craving and demanding that we give them more, even if they have to
Wow.
pay for it. That to me is what's so exciting, that we can help them
Mm.
learn something they're craving to learn in their lives and have experience of progress. I love that about what we do.
Jeez, dude. That's awesome. I
And we
love
have
that.
more and more technology. The metaverse is going to make it even better, all of
Mm-hmm.
that. But even without the metaverse, which I know is very newfangled, and there's a lot of doubt right now if that's ever going to come to fruition in the way that Mark Zuckerberg or others imagine it. But if we can take what we know about psychology, we can take what we know about having about the person itself. Because if someone wants to learn baseball, again, you're the person who has pattern recognition. You're the person who has expertise about like, okay, if you want to learn baseball from scratch, you've never played,
Hmm.
and or you've played so little and you just got knocked out by a baseball in the field, like that's if that's you, if that is you, then here's the first thing you can do to make to feel like you got some kind of progress. Let me teach you how to stand and hold the bat properly, because even that is going to make you feel more empowered, right?
Right, right.
If you can help me with that, then I'm like, dang man, I want to learn how from Noah. So
Yeah,
you have a
you're an expert.
baseball, so you have a baseball academy, like something I can do. Like, I don't know.
Dude,
Right.
wow. Awesome. Awesome, man. Okay, last question for you. This is something that I've been doing recently. On the last couple of podcasts, just ending and wrapping things up. I think it's a nice way to do it. What is your, I mean, we were talking about sort of, again, this was something that you prompted me on the first conversation we had, just marketing and how I define that for yourself or for myself. And as I was prepping for our podcast today, I was like, putting down some of the other areas that I, want to have you or, figured that maybe you had some definitions around as well. And that could be part of, second podcast episode that we do together. But what I want to ask you now is what is your definition of wealth? How do you define wealth?
It's a great question. I say that consciousness is the ultimate currency.
Wow.
And I will explain what I mean by that.
Please.
Everything we do in life is to have some greater experience of life than we've had before. We want to experience some slice of life that we haven't yet so far, right?
Right.
And so money is a means towards that. Energy, like we recover during sleep, energy is a means towards that. Everything we do is toward that end. There's a man I tremendously admire who goes by the name of Sadhguru,
Mm-hmm.
Sadhguru, and his name is Jagdish Vasudev or Jaggi Vasudev, but he goes by Sadhguru. There's a lot of people online that know about him now, but
Mm-hmm.
for many years I've been studying his work, and I got to spend some time with him as well.
Really? Awesome. My buddy actually went to the Himalayas or Nepal, I think it was last year, basically pursuing like the same
That's
sort of deal.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I know he leads some hikes and retreats and intensive, very intensive yoga programs.
Yeah.
And whether someone believes he's self-enlightened or not, it doesn't matter, because the way he explains things by itself really expands one's perspective on life. So one of the things he says is that whether you're going to the local tavern or you're going to the local temple, you're trying to do the same thing. You're trying to experience a little bit more of life than
Hmm.
you've currently experienced. And so
Hmm.
if we look at all our actions as people, we're constantly doing that. And the way he says that is you're going to infinity, which is what you want. That's the goal of every human being, is to experience yourself as the infinite, as part of everything. The only problem is you're doing it in installments.
Hmm.
It's like you're on a payment plan. Like you're getting that a little bit at a time. But the problem with that is like you're trying to get to infinity in little installments. And that's basically like you're trying to buy a Ferrari. You're buying a Ferrari to get to the moon. It's like it's just not the right vehicle. It's an amazing
Yeah.
vehicle.
Hmm.
You may be having great experiences in your life, but if you're really zooming out and understanding that your ultimate goal as a human being is to experience everything as part of yourself, to experience yourself as the infinite, then really what you want is that experience. You want that
Hmm.
consciousness, that experience, instead of having it a little bit at a time by the local
Hmm.
tavern or the local temple or whatever it is you're doing. So when I think about wealth, I think about what is it that human beings ultimately want. It is that experience of being part of everything. And that's why I say that consciousness, especially infinite ultimate consciousness, is
Yep.
the ultimate currency. It is what we want. It is what all the other forms of currency, whether it's Bitcoin or US dollars or whatever it is, and they're all controversial now because they're all going to zero in their own way. But whatever form of currency uh, you're wanting to get, or energy in the body, there's adenosine triphosphate ATP, which is
Hmm.
known even by biologists as the currency of the realm. They actually call it that.
Really?
All of these
Okay.
are forms of currency, but they're all towards that ultimate goal that we have.
Hmm.
And many people are just not even aware that that's ultimately what people want. So
Wow.
I like to bring that broader perspective, because I like to remind myself first and foremost, and then have others reflect on that too. And if somebody disagrees, that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Well, that's why I always enjoy asking people because I feel like everyone always has their own definition. So much of what you said reminds me of a book called A Happy Pocket Full of Money. You ever read that book?
I haven't, no.
Just add that to your list too. So much of that book is
I will
like,
write it down.
it's like raising wealth consciousness, and wealth being so much deeper than just sort of like the number in your bank account, which to me is like, yeah, the whole idea of like the pursuit around it, because it's tackling like, coming from a perspective of time. Like the whole first chapter of that book is all talking about like quantum physics and just like us on an energetic level, which I thought was just, I've read a lot of money books in my day and my long illustrious career, and
In your day, Noah. In your day.
and hadn't run across a book yet that like approached it from that level, because to me so much of like what money is energy. It's so much of like a transfer of energy. It really is. So
It is.
man, Sonny, this was a fantastic conversation. I want to just again say thank you for being open and vulnerable and talking to us about your journey and just sharing so much wisdom and insight, and your charm and charisma. And you're just such a joy to talk to. I really appreciate it. I could talk to you all day, but yeah, again, we'll have to have you back on. So any lasting final thoughts that you want to leave and wrap this up with?
I appreciate everything you said. It's been a great pleasure to be here. And more than anything, I want people to find their own find their own purpose, what feels like their purpose for them.
Yep.
And it takes a lot of inner exploration
Yep.
and outer exploration, like the experiment, doing those experiments, um, doing as many experiments as you can to get the experience so that you feel out like what you really enjoy.
Yep.
Because that if you bring joy to yourself, you do bring joy to the world.
Absolutely.
And then there's ways that you can. There's so many ways to monetize things these days.
Mm-hmm.
It's just amazing. So
Indeed.
just like Gary Vaynerchuk does, he does a lot of talks. He has this whole series called Trash Talk, where he's like,
Mm-hmm.
even if you don't think you can make money, he's going to garage sales and he's finding stuff and then he's selling it. He's like, you can make a living doing this,
Mm-hmm.
going to garage sales on Saturdays and Sundays, and then actually pursuing whatever else you're passionate about so that you
Yeah.
don't have to be in a job for 50, 60K a year or whatever it
Right.
is that you hate. There's so many ways now
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
it's amazing to see what's possible for people
Yes.
if they're willing to go on that journey. I mean,
Right.
because it's a scary thing. It takes courage,
Mm-hmm.
but to find support, like with friends or with us or with anybody, like reach out and just be
Yep.
like, hey, I'm scared. I want to do this or I want to try this, but I'm freaking scared. Like just
Scared. Yeah.
even to say that to someone, to even admit that to someone is so
Right.
empowering.
I
Even
love
like
it.
just privately, you don't have to go on a podcast and say
Well,
it.
I think it's a really powerful thing to end this with, because I understand, yeah, finding like the questions of like, what should I do with my life? What do I want? What's my purpose, my passion? Yeah, those are difficult questions, and that's not something that you're going to sit down for a half an hour and journal about and find your answer. But like again, I understand how difficult those questions are, but there's not a whole lot else in this life that I think is worth trying to go after and answer than something like that. Like
Yeah,
that's a battle that I feel like is worth willing to fight for.
regrets are the thing that scare me the most, and
100%.
reminds me of Jeff Bezos, who said, Jeff Bezos said, "I live my life by a regret minimization framework." Of course, Jeff Bezos. Well, you got a regret minimization
Yeah,
framework. That's fantastic.
it's
I
fantastic.
don't know exactly what that is, but
But
I'm
that's fantastic.
like okay,
Yeah,
that resonates for me.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think regrets, and my one is like I'm not realizing or living up to like my full potential, and helping like me not reaching that level means that I'm not having the level of impact that I could have on the people that I might reach, whether it's through business and clients, friends and family, people that I come across, all that stuff. That's just keeps me moving forward. So again, Sunny, so appreciative of you. Thank you so much. Anybody that's listening, watching, leave us a review on Spotify. Make sure you like this and leave a comment on YouTube. And to all my builders out there, I salute you. Again, Sunny, thank you so much. And I will see you guys all in the next episode.